ironic that we're considering a human rights bill literally on the same day we're considering what really is a tantamount to a giveaway bill to China, which everybody knows is the world's worst human rights abuser. So I would just suggest that we should join as a minority party with the majority to get a bill that's actually serious about stopping China, holding China accountable, and getting tough on China. So for example, just when we talk about LGBTQ issues, China is actually a horrific violator. China and the CCP, they censor LGBTQ content across social media platforms and all media for that matter. They shut down LGBTQ events, and they prevent Chinese LGBTQ couples from getting married and adopting. They also, let us not forget, have a horrible history of human rights violations, particularly on Turkic Muslims, including the Uyghurs. Arguably hundreds of thousands of Turkic Muslims are held without due process in the Western provinces. They're subjected to forced labor, deprived of food, deprived of other basic needs. They suffer from disease like torture, organ harvesting, and the CCP attempt to eliminate minority peoples through forced abortion and even sterilization. Forced sterilization, I might add. Remember, in 2021, Biden's State Department even determined that the CCP is committing genocide and human rights abuses against Muslim Uyghurs and other ethnic minorities in the Xinjiang province. And let us not forget that the Chinese rolled into Hong Kong, totally violating their autonomy, is what I was considered part of the British Commonwealth. You can argue that, but it's indefensible that they rolled in violating an agreement they had with the British and deprived the Hong Kongers of their freedoms. Also, the CCP is engaged in severe repression in Tibet. When I was growing up, when I was younger, that was a cause célèbre to the left. I don't know where that was forgotten from the left, but the Free Tibet movement was very popular when I was in high school, and I think it was appropriate. We got to remember that the CCP and the Chinese are doing everything they can to erase the unique religious and cultural and linguistic heritage of the Tibetan people. There's gross human rights violations. We're talking about extrajudicial detentions, disappearances, and torture. And again, that's just in Tibet. But here we are working on what I would consider a messaging bill. So with that, Representative Penny, looking at this bill, do you agree that this is, in essence, a messaging bill and that it's a distraction from what we should be doing, and that is to actually hold China accountable?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Reschenthaler. And I just want to quote Chairman Meeks, and with all due respect, he's a great New Yorker as well. But he just said we need to impose these, uphold these rights, and he said consistent with U.S. sanctions regime. And that's exactly what we're doing. And in my original testimony, I set forth numerous examples of where the Global Magnitsky Act is being used to target and sanction people who are committing crimes and atrocities against the LGBT community. And now what we have is a bill that is, kind of against what we as lawyers don't like to see, a bill that's so specific, and we'd like to see something general because it means it's more free and it's more in standing up for our Constitution. Between the crimes in Uganda, we talked about this U.S. sanctions were used there. Global Magnitsky, Bangladesh. We talked about Chechnya, Uganda, Cuba. We have been using these already. So this bill is a messaging bill. It's maybe a publicity stunt. I hate to say that. I have a lot of respect for the gentleman from Rhode Island, but at this point, we should be, exactly as you say, focusing on China, focusing on serious issues, focusing on real human rights, and we can continue through the State Department and through the specialized agencies there, which are focused on protecting LGBT community members around the world. And we already have these rules in place. So it is duplicative. And, I think we should be really focused on the real issues. I mean, these are serious issues, but we already have rules in place.
Yeah, let's just thank you, Representative. Let's just take the bill at face value and say it's not a messaging bill. There's still problems with this bill. For example, the language, I would argue, is overbroad. For example, complicity, incitement, from my understanding, there's no real definitions. Overly broad would make it hard to enforce. Do you have any thoughts on just the construction of the bill itself?
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. It is very overbroad, and it's also it's overbroad, and that's always, as you know, a constitutional red flag. And it's also specifically there's no safeguards where it could be used like to target someone, some group or individual politically under the guise of targeting under this particular provision, which concerns me. And I just want to. I know there was a discussion about the statement of the administrative policy, the administration's policy, and the State Department officials said what they said about the bill when it was first solicited, that the bill is duplicative and unnecessary. That's the official policy from the administration. And it also bizarrely expresses support for LGBT domestic issues, even though domestic law has nothing to do with Global Respect Act. So these are among the things that have been listed by our own State Department and the administration in their initial very tepid review of the, tepid support of this bill, and identifying and actually, needing to have the amendments that were proposed by Representative Perry that were unanimously voted down by the Democrats in committee. And now the Harder Amendment seems to resurrect the Perry Amendment, not quite as protective, but it's coming back. So that's where I see it. I mean, from a bill drafting standpoint, I think it's got a lot of problems.
Thanks, Representative Tenney. I really appreciate it. Without Mr. Chairman, thank you, and I yield back.